Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Working hard, dreaming big, chasing success? But still, something's holding you back? Like there's this invisible wall between you and the life you want? Maybe it's not the world, not bad luck, not even your talent. What if the real enemy is you? Not the real you, but that voice inside that craves praise, avoids humility, and always needs to be right. That voice is called ego. And until we defeat it, we'll never reach our full potential. This book? It's not just about personal growth. It's a wake-up call, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Ryan Holiday isn't your typical self-help guru. He's young, brutally honest, and obsessed with ancient wisdom. At just 19, he dropped out of college to work with legendary marketer Robert Greene, author of The 48 Laws of Power. Since then, Ryan has become a best-selling author, a top speaker, and one of the biggest modern voices for Stoic philosophy. His books like The Obstacle is the Way and Stillness is the Key have changed millions of lives, not with fluff or hype, but with timeless, battle-tested truths. In Ego is the Enemy, Ryan turns the spotlight on a silent killer of success, the prideful, arrogant, self-sabotaging part of us that thinks we already know it all. Picture this. You're at the starting line of your dream. Maybe you just started your business, got your first big opportunity, or decided to chase something you've always wanted. At this stage, most people feel excited, hopeful, and maybe even a little nervous. But that's when ego sees its chance. Ryan Holiday says ego is like a shadow that grows silently when we're not watching. It whispers things like, "You're special. You're different. You're going to crush this because you're better than the rest." And while confidence is good, ego takes it too far. It makes you believe success is guaranteed before you've even earned it. That's dangerous, because when you think you're already great, you stop listening. You ignore advice. You stop learning. And worst of all, you confuse potential with achievement. Ryan shares stories of talented people who crashed because they let ego drive them too early. They believed hype instead of doing the hard work. There's one story about a young boxer who won a few fights and then thought he didn't need training anymore. Guess what? He lost badly and his career never recovered. Ego blinds us to reality. It makes us crave recognition before results. And it tricks us into thinking we deserve more than we've actually earned. Ryan says this phase, the beginning, is where we must be the most humble. We have to be students, not stars. We have to fall in love with learning, not applause. Because the truth is, ego will always tell us what we want to hear. But growth comes from hearing what we need to hear. Whether you're starting a business, writing a book, or just trying to level up your life, the first rule is this: kill your ego before it kills your progress. Now imagine you've made it. You finally hit that milestone, the promotion, the million views, the applause, the spotlight. Feels amazing, right? But here's the twist. Success is where ego becomes most dangerous. Ryan Holiday explains that the moment we start tasting success, ego shows up dressed like confidence. But it's actually poison. It tells us, you did this all by yourself. You're untouchable now. You don't need to listen to anyone. Slowly, without realizing, we stop doing the things that made us successful in the first place. We stop learning, stop showing up early, stop saying, "I don't know." Ego wants to protect the image of greatness, not grow the actual greatness. Ryan tells the story of Howard Hughes, the brilliant young businessman and engineer who built an empire, only to isolate himself in his later years, obsessed with control, ignoring everyone's advice. His ego didn't just destroy his relationships, it destroyed his mind. But ego doesn't always look that dramatic. Sometimes it's just subtle pride. You start talking more than you listen. You stop giving credit to your team. You believe the rules don't apply to you anymore. One small unchecked moment becomes a pattern. And before you know it, you've plateaued or worse. You've started to fall. Ryan says true greatness comes from being grounded even when you're flying high. It's the athlete who wins the medal and goes back to training the next day. It's the artist who doesn't let praise make them lazy. He reminds us of Angela Merkel, one of the world's most powerful women, known for her quiet humility and refusal to chase the spotlight. That's power without ego. The truth is, success is a test. Not of your skills, but of your character. And most people fail that test because they listen to ego instead of staying hungry, humble, and human. Failure. It's painful, embarrassing, and sometimes heartbreaking. But Ryan Holiday says failure isn't the real problem. The real pain comes when ego makes failure feel like the end of the world. Think about it. How many people do you know who messed up once and never tried again? Not because they couldn't, but because their ego was too hurt to handle it. When we fail, ego says, "This shouldn't be happening to you. You're better than this." It turns a learning experience into a personal attack. It says, "People are laughing at you. They'll never respect you again." But that's just ego talking. And ego loves to turn setbacks into identity crises. Ryan reminds us that failure is part of every journey. No matter how talented or smart you are, you will fall. But when you see failure as feedback instead of shame, you grow. He shares the story of General Sherman, a U.S. Civil War leader who faced humiliating defeats before becoming one of the greatest military strategists in American history. If he had let ego define him, he would have quit. But instead, he chose humility. He asked, "What did I do wrong? What can I fix?" And that's what changed everything. Ryan also warns about blaming others, another ego defense. When things go wrong, ego wants to protect your image by pointing fingers. It was the team's fault. The market changed. People just don't get me. But as long as you're blaming others, you're giving away your power to improve. Humility says, "Maybe I didn't prepare well enough. Maybe I still have a lot to learn." And that mindset creates growth. Failure hurts. There's no denying it. But if you stay humble in that moment, you'll rise stronger. Ryan uses a simple but powerful metaphor. Ego wants you to be a castle made of glass, shiny on the outside, but fragile. Humility turns you into a fortress built of stone, solid, grounded, and unbreakable. So when life knocks you down, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What's next?" Because that's where real strength begins. Ego fears failure, but humility, it feeds on it. And in the long run, it wins. There's something magical about a person who's achieved so much, yet still walks into every room like a student. That's what Ryan Holiday teaches next. That true greatness comes from a mindset of learning, not knowing. Ego says, "You've arrived. You're the expert now." But humility whispers, "There's still so much to learn." And the truth is, the people who reach the top and stay there are the ones who never stop learning. Ryan shares the example of legendary basketball coach Bill Belichick, who even after winning Super Bowls, still picks up the phone to ask for advice, to study film like a beginner, to question his own methods. Why? Because success doesn't make you invincible. It makes you a target. And the moment you think you know it all, you stop growing. That's when ego wins. Ryan explains that humility doesn't mean weakness. It means strength under control. It means choosing curiosity over pride, asking questions instead of pretending you have all the answers. He gives a story about Kirk Hammett, the lead guitarist of Metallica. Despite being one of the world's most famous musicians, Hammett still takes guitar lessons. Yes, lessons. Because he knows the second he stops learning, he starts dying as an artist. That's the student mindset. Whether you're a CEO, a content creator, a teacher, or just someone trying to improve yourself, never let ego convince you that growth is over. It's not. Ryan even admits that writing books doesn't make him smarter. It just reminds him of how much he doesn't know. And that's what drives him to keep reading, keep studying, keep improving. Ego says, "I need to appear smart." But humility says, "I need to become wise." There's a difference. One is about looking good in front of others. The other is about actually becoming better, even if nobody sees it. And in the long game of life, that's what matters. So how do you stay in student mode when the world keeps telling you you're amazing? Ryan suggests this. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, people who give honest feedback, not flattery. Build a circle where it's okay to be wrong, to ask questions, to admit you don't know. That kind of space, it keeps your ego in check and your soul in growth. In the end, being a student forever isn't just smart, it's spiritual. It means accepting that life is bigger than you, that wisdom is endless, and that every person, no matter how small, has something to teach you. So whether you're just starting out or already successful, the real question is, are you still teachable? Ego says no, but the ones who change the world, they always say yes. Have you ever noticed how some people are always busy, always chasing something, posting, talking, performing, like they're scared of silence? Ryan Holiday says that's not hustle. That's ego, because ego can't sit still. It feeds on noise, chaos, recognition. It hates stillness. But guess what? That's exactly where power grows. In silence, in the quiet, in the spaces where we reflect, listen, think, and reconnect with purpose. Ryan tells the story of George Marshall, one of the most influential military leaders in U.S. history, who refused to chase fame or spotlight. While other generals gave dramatic speeches and posed for cameras, Marshall stayed calm, quiet, and focused. And yet behind the scenes, he made decisions that shaped world history. He was a giant, not because he shouted, but because he didn't need to. That's the kind of power ego will never understand. Ryan explains that ego makes you obsessed with what's next. It says, keep pushing. You're not doing enough. You'll be forgotten. And so you start sprinting, burning out, trying to prove your worth every single day. But true confidence, the kind that lasts, comes from slowing down and building inner clarity. When you're still, you can ask the questions that really matter. Am I doing this for impact or attention? Am I moving toward something meaningful or just staying busy to avoid feeling insecure? These are hard questions, and ego doesn't want you to ask them. But if you don't, you'll keep running in circles, achieving things that don't actually fulfill you. Stillness is how you check your motives. It's how you reset your compass. Ryan talks about journaling, meditation, even long walks in nature. Small, quiet moments where you disconnect from ego's lies and reconnect with your truth. And that truth is often uncomfortable. You realize you've been chasing approval, or maybe you're doing things for the wrong reasons. But that's where growth begins. Because once you see clearly, without ego's filter, you can choose differently. He shares another powerful example. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher. Seneca had wealth, status, and influence, yet he wrote constantly about death, failure, and humility. Why? Because he knew the ego loves to forget how temporary life really is. Stillness reminds us. It grounds us in what's real. Ryan says we should build a routine of stillness, not just once in a while, but every day. Even 5 minutes of silence can shift your entire mindset. So if you find yourself constantly needing attention, constantly posting, constantly seeking validation, stop. Ask yourself, what am I running from? Because ego runs from silence. But your real self? It's waiting for you there. And once you meet it, without noise, without performance, you'll realize something powerful. You've been enough all along. You just needed to listen. Ego loves one very dangerous idea: entitlement. That belief that I've worked hard, so I deserve this. Or worse, I'm special, so it should come to me easily. Ryan Holiday says entitlement is like acid. It slowly eats away at your character, your discipline, your gratitude. And you don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. One minute you're humble and hungry. The next, you're walking around thinking the world owes you something. You start expecting success instead of earning it. And when things don't go your way, ego throws a tantrum. How dare they reject me? Don't they know who I am? But here's the brutal truth. The world doesn't care who you think you are. The world rewards effort, value, consistency, not ego, not entitlement. Ryan gives powerful real-life examples of people who lost everything because they started believing they were too good to fail. Artists who stopped practicing. Entrepreneurs who ignored customers. Leaders who stopped listening. One of the hardest falls he talks about is from the life of John DeLorean, a brilliant engineer who created an iconic car company, but let ego and entitlement destroy it. Instead of focusing on building something great, DeLorean got obsessed with image, control, and deserving more. He surrounded himself with people who only praised him. He ignored red flags. And in the end, it all came crashing down. That's what ego does. It tells you that you're above the rules, until life teaches you that you're not. But entitlement isn't always loud or arrogant. Sometimes it's quiet. It shows up when we start comparing. I worked harder than them. Why did they get the promotion? Or when we resent the process, why is this taking so long? I deserve to be further ahead. Ryan says the antidote is this mindset. You don't deserve anything. You earn everything. That's not negativity. That's power, because it puts the responsibility and the possibility back in your hands. No one is coming to save you. No one owes you applause. You have to show up every day with humility, with hunger, with discipline. Ryan also reminds us to check ourselves when success starts coming in. Ask, am I still showing up like it's day one? Because the moment you think you're too good to send that email, to rehearse your talk, to take feedback, that's ego talking. And ego will make sure you fall. But humility, it says, I'll do the work even when nobody's watching. I'll sweep the floors if I have to. I'll earn it every single time. In the end, entitlement is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid effort. But effort, pure, consistent, humble effort, is where real power lives. So if you feel like the world owes you something, stop. Flip the script. Ask, what do I owe the world? Because when you focus on serving instead of expecting, everything changes. Ego takes, but humility builds. So what happens when you finally get it? When you stop letting ego drive the car? Ryan Holiday says, that's when your real life begins. Not the life that looks good online, but the one that feels good inside. Because when ego dies, freedom is born. You're no longer trapped in chasing followers, comparing salaries, obsessing over your image, or pretending to be someone you're not. You can finally breathe. You can finally be honest. And you can finally do the work that actually matters. Without noise, without pressure, without pretending. Ego tells you, be the best. But humility tells you, be your best. And that shift? That's what changes everything. Ryan makes it clear. Ego doesn't just ruin careers. It ruins lives. Relationships fall apart when one person always needs to be right. Teams break when leaders can't listen. Dreams die when people quit at the first sign of criticism. But when you choose humility, when you stop performing and start serving, things align. You start building things that last. You become someone people trust, not someone they fear. You bounce back from failure faster. You ask for help when you need it. You laugh at yourself. You accept feedback. You stop saying, I deserve this, and start asking, how can I contribute? Ryan shares one of the most emotional truths in the book. Some of the most powerful people in history, the ones who truly changed the world, did it quietly, without ego, without screaming for attention. Think about it. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. These weren't people obsessed with status. They were obsessed with service. They didn't need to prove anything. They just did the work, and people followed them. Not because they shouted the loudest, but because their actions spoke the truth. Ryan ends the book by reminding us that this isn't a one-time fix. Killing ego isn't a battle you win once. It's a war you fight every single day, because ego will keep showing up when you succeed, when you fail, when you're alone, or when you're being praised. But if you're aware of it, if you catch it creeping in and say, not today, that's victory. That's mastery. He suggests simple daily habits to stay grounded. Journal your thoughts. Reflect on your actions. Ask for honest feedback. Stay close to people who tell you the truth, not just what you want to hear. And most importantly, never stop being a student. In the end, Ego is the Enemy is not just a book. It's a mirror, a brutal, honest, necessary mirror that forces you to confront the lies you tell yourself. But it also gives you a choice, to keep living for your image or to live for your purpose. One leads to applause, the other leads to peace. The question is, which one are you really after?